What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Speaking Sessions podcast. We've got a special guest with us today, Steve Ramona, or it's Ramona, right?
You're correct. Yes.
All right. Just want to make sure there. I meant to ask beforehand. So this is part of communication. Somebody's name is super important to them. So that's why we want to make sure we get that right. But anyways, Steve Ramona discovered networking was the real deal at a very young age. He is on a mission to teach the world how to network correctly. His passion for the law of increase is his secret sauce. Podcasting now is the new way to network and build an incredible inner circle. The ability to bring value. Serving is a skill that will increase your networking. And today we are going to dive into the world of networking, connecting people, because just like you, Steve, I believe the more we can connect people, we can bring that value and serve other people and really support them, as we talked about offline, with their endeavors. And that does in turn come back to us in one way, shape, or form to help us be able to create the impact that we're trying to create. But welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
I'm excited. I love the Southern drawl. I could talk to you all day with that.
Oh man, it's funny. I've definitely picked it up more. My wife had more of that Southern drawl accent, and I've gotten it. My mom makes fun of me all the time. There's just different words that she'll say. Oh yeah, like bye. She's like bye. Like she'll start saying that to me now because I draw that out a lot more and just say it instead of saying bye. I guess I don't know. So I say bye or whatever. So it's funny that I've definitely picked up more of that Southern drawl thanks to my wife.
And that's part of communication, which is what we're talking about in speaking sessions, is different ways that people talk and learning that, and not judging. I love it, and if I didn't love it, but it's the content more in the communication than how it's delivered to me, just so you can understand it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's definitely aspects of the delivery is important, but you have to have the content there first. If you don't have the content, it doesn't matter how you deliver it. But if you do have the content, the way you deliver it helps with that and everything for sure. But the content has to be there. Mm-hmm. But let's go ahead and dive in here to networking. You said in your bio is mentioned that like you learned that at a young age. So why in the world was networking so important for you, especially at a young age? Like, tell us about that, like how you stumbled upon this, if you will, of networking.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's at 18 years old, just got out of high school. We all, when we're 18, you finish your high school, you want to go out that summer and beach, and you need money to do all that. Your parents most of the time are not going to, hey, here's $1,000 to have entertainment. So we had launched a year before a health club. My family, my cousin Jeff Ramona was the president, and he reached out and said, hey, you're not playing football now. Football was done. Sports were done. You're graduating. Hey, why don't you come work for us? And so I came and worked at the front desk. And if everybody, you look back, there's always those 1 or 2 or 3 moments that change your life. And sometimes you don't realize it 2 years later. So when I started working the front desk, one thing we taught our front desk staff was customer service. Give them a towel. Don't forget that. Remember names. A simple thing that people think about. But our staff would say, Philip would come in. I said, I haven't seen Philip in months. I don't know his name. Then she'd look over at the computer screen, go slide their card and go, Philip, have a great workout. Good to see you again. And keep doing that. And I did that and learned. And of course, working a lot more than a lot of our part-time staff, I started to get to know people. And these relationships were being built with 40, 50, 60, 70-year-olds. Some of these very wealthy people that have done very well with themselves. So at 18, it's like, peers. And one of the great stories that came from it was the Italian guy, Tony. He's a financial advisor dealing with lots of money. And he came in, he used to call me kid. Hey, kid. Got some tip for you. I said, what's up, Tony? And being both Italian, we tease each other. He'd go, here's a book. It's called The Wealthy Barber. I think that's the name. It's still out there. It's about 40, 50 pages. It was short. He says, read that, and I'll get back to you next week and tell me what you got from it. So he comes back, and, hey, did you read it? I said I did. So the basis was take my income that I'm making now, put 10% away, and don't touch it. Got it, kid. Go do it. So years go by. He had finally left the membership. He was probably in the middle 70s, so he wasn't working out anymore. But I looked at an account at 12 years later. Over $60,000 in that account. And I was like, holy moly. I felt like I went online. Remember, this is back in 90. So 6,000 worth a lot more than it is today.
Yeah.
Probably worth 600,000, right? So I called him and said, thank you. Hey, can I give you $1,000 for your advice? You were an advisor. He says, no, kid, here's what you did. When you took my advice and ran with it, somewhere in my journey after that, I met somebody that probably made me a bunch of money and connected me with other people. So what I learned was he was serving me without getting abundance or value or money, but knew it was going to come somewhere else and didn't think about it. He was just out serving. He used to help a lot of people, in the club, sit down, have coffee and things like that. I'm like, holy mackerel, two things are happening. I'm building a network of very successful people who become, let's go to lunch. We had a restaurant right next door. Hey, let's go to lunch. Yeah. Or go out to dinner sometimes. And the value of that in my network that grew from the health club after 20 years, I launched a restaurant with a friend of mine. Brought that to my network too. We became a very successful restaurant. I launched a recycling company, a brick and mortar. Brought my network to that, became very successful. And this is one of the powers of a network, is that when you start an enterprise, a project, a business, whatever it may be, or have a philanthropic opportunity, you've got that network of hundreds or thousands of people that you can reach back to and communicate with because you've built a great relationship.
Man, and that network is so important. And I've got a great example of where I thought that I had a great network. And I want us to dive into this because your network sounds like it was in person. And I had a great network online. I decided to do an in-person event one year. It flopped. It was good overall. The people that were there really enjoyed it. They got a lot out of it. But having these thousands of people that I had networked with, I would probably talk to at least 100 of them on a regular basis. They were all over the country and they decided not to come in, understandably, because I'm not a big name. I didn't necessarily have like the biggest names coming in to speak. And there was definitely other aspects that I could have done to be able to market it more. There were certainly things that I could have done better at that. But I had this online network that I thought was fairly strong, and I still talk to several of them today. And even some of the speakers that came in were from out of state. They were online friends at first that became, I guess, in-person, real friends, if you will. Mm-hmm. But I found that because I didn't have my local in-person network, my network wasn't near as strong, because there is a difference when you're networking online with somebody, when you have that person that you know online versus that person you know in person. There's definitely more buy-in. And then, of course, from an event perspective, traveling from 30 minutes away versus flying in for 3 hours, that's a huge difference. There's a lot more commitment. So there is that aspect. But I'd be curious to see what your thoughts are on networking, because obviously we met online. I feel like we've built up pretty good relationships so far and everything. And so there is that validity there. But what is the difference that you've seen between networking and meeting people in person versus networking and meeting people online?
Great question. This is why Philip is a great podcast host, because the questions are most important. I'm going to give you a very unusual answer. What you just described in that story, which is a fantastic story, your networking was a success. If you meet one person or 1,000 people, that one person can lead to hundreds of connections. So never grade your network in a sense of, Steve has 1,000 and Philip has 50. Well, I've got a better network. It's always about the quality of the network. And we talked in the green room before the show about some people and how they acted and probably were not a fit for us. Your network is growing by finding people that connect with you, that want to build that relationship, that want to go in the journey with you. That's what it is. Me and you are going through a journey. I've given you some referrals. We're on this podcast. We're going to do different things together over the next years, which I'm excited about because I want to really help you. But with your network, you want to point that out. Find those people that are a fit. It's not everybody. I get 3 to 10 referrals a day. And I meet with most 99% of them, because I always tell people, when you walk in that door of opportunity, you never know what you're going to get. And some big things have happened in the last year when I met people for the first time because of a referral. And then here's the other thing, the respect for the person who gave you the referral. I've had this happen. I'm not a big fan, but again, I'm not judging. Everybody has their own way. I sent a referral and this person goes, I don't want that referral. That's not a good fit for me. And I said, well, just meet with them for 15 minutes. Hey, this is not a fit. Be honest with them. And they never met with them. Who knows what could have happened? Yeah. I've had people miss networking meetings, and this guy lost a $10,000 deal because I was introducing him to somebody. He didn't show up because he didn't feel good. And I'm not saying you get COVID or that's okay, but keep in mind, especially virtually, because you can't get, we can't get sick doing this. When that opportunity door opens, you can walk through it. And if it doesn't work, you open the door and walk back out. That's what networking is about. And a servant's heart, my podcast, Doing Business with a Servant's Heart, I had to learn from very wealthy people, mentors of mine, you got to say no sometimes. I say no a lot. Doesn't mean they're bad or whatever. It's just not a fit. Like a circle in a square hole. That doesn't fit. Doesn't make you actually are a better servant when you say no, because you're not helping them and you're not helping yourself. Once you realize that, it's a game changer.
I want to dive into that, but you brought up the point that I didn't bring up in this story, which is really interesting. So I created this event here locally, and there was a guy that he ended up moving here shortly before my event, and he was looking around trying to network, and I need to connect you with him. I don't know. His name's John Vanderhoek. I don't think I've connected you with him yet, but an amazing networker. And what's interesting is he came to the event. So he was really the only person outside of the speakers that came to the event. And from that, we actually have built a relationship. And just to give a little bit more backstory, like I had what I thought was a financial advisor at the time, and he was a financial advisor. And it's funny because I'm like, oh, no, I got a financial advisor. I'm good. But we still just kind of connected. And he was still just there, and he would connect me with other people. And he's probably been my best source as far as connecting me with other people. And I do my best to connect with him or connect him with others as well on the back end. But then over time, now I work with him. He's my financial advisor now, but it was because of just having that conversation and just me doing that event and that one connection, like you were saying, and he's became an amazing connection for me and an amazing friend and obviously advisor as well there. So I was just thinking about that. But you mentioned about saying no. Sometimes you do say no because people aren't a great fit, but you also mentioned that people, like, you shouldn't just not get with somebody because you might not think that you can do business with them. And that's what I've noticed a lot of times when I have went to networking events or talk with people about that. They like prejudge somebody, and I'm guilty with others that I prejudge somebody based on how they look or what business they have. And I pre-sell or don't sell them because they're like, oh, they do this job, they probably can't afford me or whatever. And there's these different reasons, or, oh, they're in this industry, so yeah, they wouldn't want what I do and everything. But you are basically saying you shouldn't do that because you never know who that person might be able to connect you with. So I would love for you to share a story on that, because I think that's an important aspect when it comes to networking, that too many people, especially new people to networking, they pass up so many opportunities because, oh, that person can't help me right now.
Yeah, it's a great point. And then the lesson you just taught the audience with that one guy showed up. 2 lessons. Still do your event. I've done workshops when nobody showed up and I still did it. I have coaches that do that because it's that universe. You keep doing it and then 2 show up. And so that's the first thing. The second thing, one guy. And how many years has it been?
It's been about 2.
2 years. 2 things. He's given you a network and increased your network. Second thing is you found a great financial advisor. So personally, it's helped you. But it took a while. You shouldn't think in your mindset you can sell right away. Mm-hmm. Behind you is mindset over motivation. And that is so true. Your mindset should be being in value to people, every person you meet. And he mentioned law of increase in my bio from Think and Grow Rich, chapter 4. I'll never forget. He says, bring a law of increase to where you meet. And that's value, or resources, tips, referrals, or, at church, and I use this story all the time. I told a lady her daughter looked beautiful in that bow. Well, I just brought her value. Is it making me money? No. Is it making her money? No. But it changed the universe.
Yeah.
I gave something, she got joy. She smiled and thanked me and said, "You're such a kind person." So we want to be careful in our mindset with networking, the motivation of money, of fear of missing out. That, hey, I just met Philip. He's got this great financial advisor. Hey, I need to meet this guy. Oh my God, I can make millions off him.
Yeah.
That's where you say no. And I want to kind of change the direction on that. There are times you're not going to say no, especially if somebody gives you a parameter to work with, like a coach has a $25,000 program, which I'm part of. Well, somebody that sells Mary Kay, my wife sells Mary Kay, nothing wrong with that, but it's usually a part, they couldn't afford that.
Yeah.
So it may not be a good connection because we only have so much time in the day. But if somebody refers somebody to you and you just feel it's a good connection, make it 15 minutes. So that's 4 meetings a day, an hour. You take 3 hours of that. So you've met 12 people. Well, if that one person gives you something like this gentleman that's the financial advisor, it's time well spent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned the time frame there. That's something here recently I had to change because I thought, man, okay, 30 minutes. 30 minutes is a pretty solid amount of time. I can definitely meet with somebody, really get to know them. 15, depending on the person, it seems like a good amount of time. And then other people, it's like, oh man, this was so short. And then other people, it's like, it's still, wow, this was a really long time. So it definitely depends on the person there. But I'm curious your thoughts on that, because you mentioned about 15 minutes. I think that's a good, like, very intro call, very brief, get to know each other and not waste each other's time too much. Because you may think you're the greatest thing on earth, but for somebody else, you're just not a great fit. And that's okay, because we don't get along with each other because of our backgrounds, whatever is going on. And that's okay. There's somebody else that needs you, that wants to get to know you and everything. So when it comes to doing these, or obviously we're talking about virtual, that'd be kind of awkward to meet for 15 minutes in person. But when we're talking about virtual connections, like what do you feel like is that kind of sweet spot, and how, let's just go with that first. As far as time
we teach in our Mastermind Alliance, me and Josh Tapp, my partner, we talk about, and he's taught me this, a 30-minute. But here's what happens. If you're feeling it's not happening, they may be a taker, they're not a fit, whatever it may be, then you close it out at 15 minutes. You've given somebody some time, and you figure out, I'm not good at this because I tend to go on, and it's not good because there's only a certain amount of time during the day. And I have more than others. That's why I do that. But, at the 10, 15 minute mark, they know it and you know it. It's go, hey, it's great to meet you, Philip. There's not really much we can do here. I didn't want to take too much of your time. I appreciate it. And if you find anybody that's a fit for me, or if I find somebody a fit for you, for example, let's do that. Do the 30-minute, and it hits 30 minutes, you can always meet again.
Yeah.
And maybe the next one's an hour. Yeah. Or now you delve into, here's how we can help each other and do all that. So it's a great question, Philip, and I love that you asked that, because, and that's not set in stone. If you want to do all hour, again, this is your business. You run it the way you want. You're different. You have a full-time job. So you're limited in your hours. So it's going to be different than me. But I used to meet 12 people a day. I've cut that back because then I can't, in a half hour, that's 6 hours of meetings. I can't do the work, like get my podcast out there and things that we've talked about. I don't have VAs like that. I'm not a rock star like you. No, I'm half kidding. You got a VA. But again, everybody out there, listen, do it the way you want. I'll give you ideas. Philip will give you ideas. But there's never anything set in stone. And another piece of advice I learned this week on my TV show, my guest, Gary Vaynerchuk, if most of you know who he is, very successful, talks about his story of working. We forget about working. We want to send one email and make $1 million. It ain't going to usually happen, especially if you're doing network marketing. Your offer is $1,000. You can run those numbers and figure that it just doesn't happen. Yeah. But what Gary Vee, because we're all going to make mistakes, and I want to go back to your event that you had. It wasn't a mistake. It was a risk you took, a decision to make, and it didn't work out. Business owners run into this all the time. I want to be 3-0. I want 3 things I do, and it's going to be successful. 5 things I want to be 5-0. You don't have to be. Gary Vaynerchuk says 172 and 30 and 81. 172 wins and 81 losses. 81 losses.
Yeah.
And not only losses in money, but things that maybe it was an ad he did, maybe it was an event. You are going to have things that don't work. Once you have that mindset over motivation, I keep bringing that book up, it's so great, that's going to happen. You learn. You're not going to do that event now. You're going to change it if you do it again, or just never do it again. We fail all the time, and it's okay to fail.
Yeah. And I found the most successful people fail more often. And really, if you want to go down to it, a lot of people talk about failure is only when you quit. So let's just throw that out the window. I mean, I get that. That's definitely a great positive spin to put on it. But they have failures, losses more often, things that don't go the way that they expected them to or they wanted them to. And I want to point out something, because we talked about this offline and you mentioned about how can I help you at the end of the call. And remember, it's how can I support you? Changing that word will help out there. But let's actually talk about the call itself a little bit. I know as you get more familiar with this, it gets a lot easier. And you're very good at conversation. I'm very good at conversation. But I bet there's somebody listening right now that, and I've been on those calls too, where I'm like, even though I can pull out conversation, there are some people that it's just, I mean, I'd rather watch paint dry than have this conversation with them, because they just don't know how to have a conversation. And everything is, what do you do for business? Business coaching. All right. And you're trying to pull stuff out, and then becomes an interrogation. So how is there a structure or a method to your badness of how you create an engaging conversation that gets both parties to be able to know each other and then have a good conversation and feel good coming out of that conversation? Because every conversation we've had, I know I've left with a smile on my face, because you're always good about saying something funny, but we also get into business and life and everything. So what's your method behind that to connect with people?
Yeah, and you're right. Madness is definitely a good description for me, but in a good way. Yeah, there's a number of things I do, and it becomes natural for me. I believe this is a skill, like gratitude, like building a podcast, whatever, personal development, reading. Those are all skills. This is a skill, and it's really simple. You meet somebody for the first time, you're an extrovert. Well, you're going to talk, but shut up and listen. And I'll say that again. Shut up and listen. I don't say just listen, because I could just listen to you but not take it in. So when you shut up and then cross the bridge of listening, like we did in our first meeting, I learned that, hey, you worked at BMW, I believe it was a factory, BMW. We talked about how long it takes. I couldn't believe how many cars went. I mean, how long ago was that? And I still remember it.
Yeah.
And you don't have, and maybe it's a superpower of mine. I don't like that word, but maybe it is. But because I listened.
I know you've got notes over there. You're reading through your notes.
I do have, some I have notes. That's another actually skill, is I didn't do that before, but I took notes so I can go back and learn about how I can help this person. The other thing is, think of value as you're listening to the person you're talking to. Think of value. And then for the introvert and extrovert too, shut up and listen. For the introvert, and you mentioned it, there's a lot of people I talk to like, I'm a little shy. Questions. Why did you start your business coaching program? How long have you been doing your business coaching program? What are your challenges? And I hope you're writing these down, audience, because this is I'm not special. I'm special because I take action and do this. And so does Philip. And I appreciate this platform to do that. But you start asking those questions. And as you get a question, like I've been doing it for 2 years. So what's your goals? What are you desires, your whys? What's your hobbies? What do you do for fun? Any of those questions to engage a conversation, and then you get to learn. I mean, I had a podcast, and if you're a podcast host, questions, don't pick up before. I met Roy Firestone, who's ESPN sports journalist. He's done 5,000 interviews with celebrities and pro athletes. He said, I never had a question written down. I didn't have this paper go. He says, I asked a question and led to another question as I listened. So it made me excited, because that's what I was doing when he's on the show. He was thumbing up it, saying, this is good. The other thing is energy. If you need to do something before your meeting, to meditate, watch something funny, bring energy. Like you said, we laughed. My podcast, the first 10 minutes, we did that. We laughed, we talked about things, we built an energy to walk into this. The same thing a one-on-one is. Build that energy and think of value. Try to go first. I don't always go first. Somebody go, hey, tell me about you. Be prepared of what you do and make it short. I don't want to hear 10 minutes of what somebody does. Yeah, your eyes are rolling. We've both run into that. It's like, oh, come on. Okay. Even podcast guests sometimes can ramble like I'm doing now, but at least giving value. So be prepared when people ask you, so what do you do? I'm a podcast host, TV host. I love to bring energy, and I have it all down. It may be different for every person. And also be prepared, because when you give value to somebody, 99% of the time they're going to go, how can I support you? Mm-hmm. See, I changed the word again.
There you go.
Get used to that. and what a powerful tool, because audience, I get 3 to 10 referrals a day, Monday through Saturday. I just got 2, as we're talking today, I get 2 emails as they pop up on my site and my screen for referrals, because I bring value, I bring energy, and I bring fun. But ask those questions, shut up and listen, and you're going to have great one-on-ones, and you're going to learn right away if they're going to be a fit.
Yeah.
Somebody says, hey, I sell Amway, or I suggest, network marketing company. Love it. That's great. But they're not going to be fit for my mastermind. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're a fit for another community. If you have multiple businesses, it's such a cool way to figure out where they fit. What's their pain point? What's their desires? What's their passions? I want to make $100,000 next year because I want to take my wife to Italy. Where are you at now? I make $10,000 a year on their side. Well, now I know right away where I can. That's the power of questions and shutting up and listening.
Yeah. And the one thing that you didn't bring out here is that people love to talk about themselves. So the more that you can get them to open up and talk about themselves, it's funny, as humans, we start to like that person a lot more because, hey, I get to talk about myself around them. I get to really be selfish and self-absorbed and talk about me, which makes me like you even more, even if you don't tell me that much. Like, oh yeah, Steve's a great guy. And we always talk and have a good time, have a great conversation. It's like 90% of the conversation is always about me. So you probably don't want to be around somebody all the time that's like that, but on that initial connection call, if you can try and make it more them than you talking, I think that's a great way to really build up good rapport, but it allows you to get to know them and learn how to support them and connect them with the people. And so to kind of add on what you said, and you kind of brought this into podcasting, and that was the other thing I was going to bring up too, is I don't go in with a list of questions. Yeah, I might ask about, the same things, business, life, hobbies, what are their goals, things like that. But based on what they say, I'll ask a question to dive in deeper about that. So if they tell me, oh yeah, I'm doing business coaching. Oh, how long have you been doing business coaching for? Oh, 3 years. Maybe it's like, what's one of the coolest transformations you've had with a client or something? Oh, blah, 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 blah. And they'll tell me, oh man, that's so cool. And then we might go somewhere else. And similar with the podcast, because people ask me, how do you do so good at having a conversation or having an interview on a podcast? That what notes do you have written down? What questions do you ask? I don't. I mean, I have the notes of like what the person is, what they do, their bio, stuff like that, but I don't have a list of questions. And some people want to say, well, what happens if the conversation isn't good? Well, like you mentioned, if the conversation's not good, you can end it early. What's to say you always have to have a 30-minute podcast or an hour-long podcast? It can be shorter than that. And if it is so bad, it's your podcast. You don't have to put the podcast episode out there. so there's all these things, but just go in and as they answer something, dive into it a little bit deeper. And we've been doing this whole time on this podcast. You mentioned about doing 15 minutes or 30 minutes for a networking time slot. And so I asked, what do you think is the best time slot? That wasn't a scripted question, but it was based on what you had just said. So, that's a good question to ask as a follow-up to what you just said. As an example, we've been doing that this whole time and going back and forth and everything.
So audience, I'm going to tell you, this is an edification's big, and I'm going to do it right now. And it's coming from my heart. What Philip just said is 5% of podcast hosts. Let's say 15%. 85% are not like that.
Yeah.
If you can learn just that, your podcast will grow. I've got 2 sponsors, and I do it just because of doing a great job with. I have 2 sponsors because of guests like you, Philip, and other people my audience likes, and it's built the podcast. That's your goal. It's not Joe Rogan podcast. He got 100 million. That's a TV show. He just calls it a podcast. So the power of that is great. And I'm going to tell you a real-time story, Philip, and I told you in the green room about a gentleman from Africa today. Great call. But it started out with a LinkedIn message this morning. And he said, so I'd never got a list of questions from you. What are the questions? Said, I'll just roll with it. He goes, okay, all right, I'll join. He wasn't happy. I mean, I could tell by how he's typing it. People are, how do you do that virtually? Well, you can tell what words people are typing. You kind of get a feel for that. So I was a little bit nervous, to be honest, because I want every podcast, because I'm promoting them. I want it to be great because it's about Philip. It's about Adedoyin or whoever. We got done with that podcast. And I said, Adedoyin, how'd that go? He goes, oh my God, so much better than I thought it would be. I was a little concerned coming in, how this was so great. It was conversational. I got my points across, and you interject. And that it just happened an hour and a half ago. And it happens all the time with me. And the same thing when I do a one-on-one. I get so many comments after. This has been one of the best one-on-ones I had this week, this month, whatever. Because it was engagement of positivity of how can we bring value to each other. Yeah. Again, I might do 5 referrals and Philip, you go, hey, I'm going to meet this financial advisor. This is not a scoreboard. It's not basketball, baseball, or football. There's no scoreboard up there going, oh man, Steve did 12 and Philip gave 1 resource that's probably not going to help him. The how, the when, and the where, when value is given to people, we will never know, at least in our lifetime. We just don't. It's the universe talking to us, or ether, or whatever you want to say. You live your life that way, not caring about that, you'll have abundance like I do.
Yes, and when we care about, tit for tat, going back and forth, and I give you 1 referral, so you give me 1. I give you 1 connection, you give me 1. Well, first of all, that's not a healthy relationship. No relationship is equal. I'm married to my wife, and there are times that she is on the ball and she does so much more for me than I do for her. And there's times where I do way more for her than she does for me. And that's okay, because that's a marriage. That's a true relationship. We don't meet in the middle to make it happen. We come over to each other's sides, if you will, to make it work, to make things happen. And a good example would be when we're sick. We go and do a little bit extra to take care, or like the other day I came home, I was just really tired from work. And typically when I get home, I start to take care of our daughter, because then it's about time, she gets home before me. So she's been taking care of our daughter. So she might rest a little bit, and then she's got to start cooking supper. So there I was supposed to do that. But I got home, I was tired, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to take a nap. So she kept taking care of our daughter, and I got up in time for her to start cooking supper and everything. And so we go back and forth with this, and this is the same thing with networking. Now, if it's literally 100 to 0, more than likely what's going to happen, the very strong networker is just going to stop connecting with people. You've got to give at least something. So that's the only expectation that should be there when it comes to networking, is that you're trying to give back. And it may take a while. It may be hard. You may have a super specialty or special thing that you do, and it's hard to connect. And I know it happens to me all the time, because like I help people with speech prep to get ready for stage, and that's very niche. And so not every day is somebody trying to get on a stage. So I don't get a lot of connections to come to me, or a lot of referrals to come to me. But sometimes what happens is people know I have a good network as well, and they'll connect me because they know I can connect that person with the next person. And so that's the power behind networking to me as well, is that, and this is what we've kind of been talking about. It's not necessarily about if you connect me with somebody, something happens now. No, it could be connection to connection to connection. It could be 3 connections down the lineage, if you will, so to speak, before something really happens from that. But it's just about giving without expectation. Bob Berg, the Go-Giver, his book, The Go-Giver, is what this is all about. You give without expectation. You connect people without expectation. You get on these calls without expectation, because it's a lot like commission breath. If we were to get on a networking call, and you could tell the whole time I was just like, I wonder, let's see, is Steve wanting some speaking coaching? And then I could tell, and then I'm like, oh, Steve's not a speaker. All right, well, yeah, Steve, man, this is pretty cool. I've been enjoying our time together. And like, you can just tell, like, I'm ready to get off the call. You're not going to want to connect me with people. And then we're both going to feel miserable after the call too. So don't go into that networking call, networking event, or whatever with that commission breath, with the thought of closing somebody there, because it's just not going to work out. In this entrepreneur world, this self-development world is a very small world. I meet people, not all the time, but I would say probably at least once a month, where it's like they happen to know somebody that I know. And it's people from all across the country. And it blows my mind. I actually just met a guy this week. He's in San Antonio, and he knew somebody that I know from North Carolina. It's like, this is crazy, but that's a part of the self-development world. It is a small world. And there's not many of us, kind of like to talk about with the podcasting, the ones that do a podcast unscripted. I would say it's probably more like 5%. I really don't think a lot of people go unscripted, because I've had people on the podcast too that will sit there and they get worried. They're like, oh, what do I need to be prepared? I'm like, just come. You've given me your bio. You give me everything I need. Well, we're going to talk about this. So I'll give them that. I get a little bit, you want something to be able to kind of be prepared. Like, hey, we're going to talk about this topic. All right. Well, and then what are the questions? I'm like, I don't have any. And then some of them, they get bad enough, I'm like, all right, we'll probably be talking about this, and this within it, but this is the theme, if you will, for the podcast, and that's it.
Yeah, when you go on podcast, and if you don't know what you do, then you're going to worry about those questions.
Yeah.
But if you know what you do, you've asked me questions, I'll have an answer. Because one, I practice it. So if you be guest on podcast, don't expect the outcome. Just practice that. Because that's what I did as a host. I just started recording. They were sucked. I mean, I was clapping like this in the middle of my podcast because I forgot I turned on the recording. I left it there. I laugh at it every time I see it. J.R. Smith still laughs at it when we talk about it. Let me give your audience 2 tips that will increase your income. I had a lady go from $100,000 to $1 million last year in her income doing this. We're in the people asset business. Your asset, number one asset, is people. Philip, you don't have people. Steve doesn't have people. You out there, if you don't have people, you can't sell your service or product. But it's that simple. So you need to build your network with people, like we've been talking about. Here's 2 ways to do it. 1, practice serving or bringing value. Start on Monday, and if you want, go on Amazon. I have a serving journal you can write in it. But starting Monday, start tracking every person, and every person you meet, bring them value and write it down. I met a lady, I helped her put her groceries in her car. She was really happy. I gave 2 referrals to Joe Smith, and he was very excited. I asked for, my whatever. Just kind of jot down how you felt, how they felt. At the end of the week, look back at all those interactions, engagements, and go write down, how did all those people feel? General, hey, they were all happy, which there probably will be, or they were so excited. How did you feel? Oh man, it made me feel good. And a bad day turned into good, whatever that is. But the most important thing is write down how your week changed. And I challenge everybody on this audience, reach out to me or reach out to Philip and tell me if it was a negative response. I want to hear what happened. And rarely, but it might be the way that you're serving. It might be the way you're presenting. The second thing, and this is the thing I tell people, 2 things. Meet 10 to 15 new people a week. Oh, I'm brand new. I don't, I work full time and I'm only online a few times. That's okay. Build up to it. 10 to 15 new people. And that could be people on your contact list. Here's the other tip. I had a guy make $1 million a month, 27 years old, making $1 million a month with a program, a flipping house program. He just marketed through his contact list of 1,000 people. That's all he reached out to and said, I have a way, you send an email, quick question. If your business uses plumbers, do you know a good plumber? I'd love an intro. Again, I'm going to say that again, audience, and it could be a text or a Facebook message, LinkedIn. Quick question. Do you know a plumber? I'd love an intro. Figure out who that persona or bucket is that you work with, and maybe a struggling plumber if you're a business coach or a financial advisor. Do you know parents of special needs, which I have an advisor that does that? I'd love an intro. Do that, and guess what? You're going to start meeting people because they're going to give you referrals or go, yeah, my child's special needs or my cousin's. Now you're building the 10 to 15, you're building your network, and two things happen. One, now you have more opportunity to sell. We are selling your product to somebody or service. But two, you're building your network. So when people come in and go, I don't have a big network, then go out. You're a hunter and gatherer mode. You need to build your network. I did 1,800 referrals last year. So that was 500 a month. Maybe it was about, but it was like 400 or 500 a month. Now I work Monday through Saturday. I do more. It's not the number, but people are astonished when they hear that, because my goal is to build my network. Even though it's big, I never know who I meet that's going to open that door to lead to the 2 sponsors in my podcast, lead to some partnerships with billion dollar companies that I'm part of that are paying me. And then the last thing, if you're struggling in your business, and I talk to people all the time, and I haven't had a sale in 2 months, go out and partner up with somebody that has an affiliate program, a coach, find out whoever that may be that does pay a commission for you to share it. Spend an hour or 2 a week, put it in your calendar and go, I'm going to reach through my network and see who's going to fit with Philip. 5 speakers? Hey, you need to talk to Philip. He helps you with your speech. I know you get nervous. Here, I'd love the intro. Yeah, I'd love that. Philip has an affiliate program. We don't give you do or don't. I just got paid $932 on Thursday. I got a Zelle sent to me for a coach that I shared. He keeps paying me monthly because I shared 5 clients for him.
Nice.
Now the money, take that money, pay your bills, and grow your business. Take that money, pay your bills, and then if your business is growing, it's busier, then you do less of that. But when people say, especially virtually and online, I need to make money, there are so many opportunities out there to do that. If you need help, reach out to me and I'll help you with that as well.
Love it, man. Steve, that is the perfect way for us to end this podcast here. And as always, you're always bringing value and finding ways to support other people. And Steve, we appreciate all that you've shared with us today. So thank you for coming on the podcast.
God bless you, Philip. You're doing great job. Great stuff.
Thank you.